In 1857, a single court case shook the foundation of the United States and pushed an already divided nation closer to civil war. Known as Dred Scott v. Sandford, it was more than just a legal ruling. It was a defining moment that exposed deep conflicts over slavery, race, and the meaning of freedom in America. If you like learning history in short, clear timelines like this, hit subscribe for more videos just like it. The story begins with Dred Scott, an enslaved man born in Virginia around 1799. Scott was owned by an army surgeon, Dr. John Emerson, who took him on travels throughout the United States. This detail would later become crucial. Emerson brought Scott to the free state of Illinois and the free territory of Wisconsin, where slavery was prohibited under federal law, including the Missouri Compromise. After Emerson's death, Scott found himself back in Missouri, a slave state under the ownership of Emerson's widow. Believing that his time living in free areas should have granted him freedom upon Emerson's death, Scott made a bold and risky decision. He sued for his liberty in court. His argument was simple but powerful. Once free, always free. This legal principle had been recognized in some earlier cases, and Scott hoped the courts would agree that his residence in free territory had permanently freed him. At first, Scott's case seemed promising. A lower Missouri court ruled in his favor, declaring him a free man. However, this victory was short-lived. The Missouri Supreme Court later overturned the decision, ruling against Scott and rejecting the idea that time spent in free territory guaranteed freedom. Undeterred, Scott's case moved into the federal court system, eventually reaching the highest one in the land, the Supreme Court of the United States. By the time the case reached the Supreme Court, the stakes had grown far beyond one man's freedom. The nation was deeply divided between North and South over the issue of slavery. Many hoped the court's ruling would settle the matter once and for all. Instead, it did just the opposite. In a 7-2 decision, the court ruled against Dred Scott. Writing for the majority, Chief Justice Roger B. Taney delivered an opinion that stunned the nation. The court declared that Scott was not a citizen of the United States and therefore had no right to sue in a federal court. According to Taney, African Americans, whether enslaved or free, were not considered part of the political community when the Constitution was written and thus could not claim the rights it gave to citizens. This alone was a devastating blow, but the court went even further. In one of the most controversial rulings in American history, the justices declared that Congress had no authority to ban slavery in the territories. This meant that the Missouri Compromise, which had limited the expansion of slavery for decades, was unconstitutional. By invalidating this compromise, the court effectively opened all Western territories to being enslaved states. The decision had immediate and far-reaching consequences. In the South, many slaveholders celebrated the ruling as a victory for their rights, and they are now considered property. They believed it confirmed that slavery could expand into new territories, strengthening their economic and political power. In the North, however, the reaction was outrage and irate disbelief. Many people saw the decision as proof that the federal government was controlled by pro-slavery interests. It energized the growing abolitionist movement and strengthened opposition to spread slavery. The ruling also gave a major boost to the newly formed Republican Party, which had been created to resist the expansion of slavery into the territories. The Dred Scott decision also deepened mistrust between the North and the South. Northerners feared that slavery would spread everywhere, even into states where it had long been banned. Southerners took it on the other hand and felt increasingly defensive, believing their way of life was under attack, and instead of resolving the issue of slavery, the court intensified the conflict. One of the most significant aspects of the decision was how it redefined the role of the federal government. By declaring that Congress could not regulate slavery in the territories, the court limited the power of elected officials and elevated the rights of slaveholders above all else. This angered many Americans who believed in democratic decision-making and territorial self-government. The ruling also had a profound human impact. For African Americans, both enslaved and free, the decision was a stark reminder of their lack of rights and protections under the law at this time. It reinforced a system that denied their humanity and legal standing, making the struggle for freedom and equality even more urgent. The political fallout from the case was enormous. It became a central issue in debates across the country, including the famous Lincoln-Douglas debates between Abraham Lincoln and Stephen A. Douglas. Lincoln strongly criticized the decision, arguing that it was morally wrong and threatened the nation's future. He warned that if the ruling stood, slavery might spread unchecked across the entire country. Ultimately, the Dred Scott decision is remembered as one of the worst Supreme Court rulings in American history. It failed to resolve the nation's most pressing issue, and instead accelerated the path towards American Civil War. Just 4 years after the decision, the country would be at war with itself. In the years following the Civil War, the ruling was effectively overturned by constitutional amendments. The 13th Amendment ended slavery, the 14th established citizenship for all persons born in the United States, and the 15th aimed to protect voting rights. Together, these changes directly contradict the principles set forth in the Dred Scott decision. Today, the case stands as a powerful lesson about the dangers of injustice in the legal system. It shows how court decisions can shape the course of history, for better or worse, and reminds us of the importance of equality under the law. The story of Dred Scott is not just about one man's fight for freedom, it's about the nation struggling to live up to its ideals and the consequences when it fails to do so.